By 2030, nearly half of your competitors will have automated their workflows with AI agents. But here is the genuinely terrifying part. By the end of 2027, 40% of the companies trying to do this are going to just crash, burn, and completely cancel their projects.
Wow. Yeah, that is a steep cliff.
Right. Why is half the market striking gold while the other half runs straight off that cliff? Let's dive in. I am your host, Lex, and alongside me is our resident expert, Vera, here on the C9 Podcast Show. A massive welcome to all the C9 followers of our podcast and business page tuning in today.
Absolutely. It is great to be here.
And we have a deep dive today that is, well, it's custom tailored specifically for you, the Australian business owners and C-level executives out there who are, just trying to navigate this incredibly volatile technological landscape.
It really is a critical moment for leadership right now. I mean, we are looking at a landscape filled with both immense operational promise and, frankly, staggering financial risk.
Yeah, the stakes are just incredibly high.
Exactly. And the organizations succeeding aren't necessarily using different technology than the ones failing. The difference lies entirely in, well, how they make decisions about implementing that technology. The ones failing are treating AI as a quick software purchase. The ones succeeding are treating it as a fundamental shift in their actual business capability.
Which is exactly why our mission for today's deep dive is to give you, the listener, the actual blueprint to be in that successful group. We're going to cut through all that relentless hype of AI by applying a rigorous, step-by-step framework to the adoption of agentic AI.
Right, because without a framework, you're just guessing.
Exactly. Specifically, we're going to map this to the 5 steps of the effective decision framework. Because, if you follow these 5 steps, you position your operations to be in that scaling 45%. Rather than the canceled 40%.
Which brings us to the very first step of making an effective decision, right? Classifying the problem. Because before an Australian leader can solve, say, a workflow bottleneck with AI, they must first classify exactly what kind of problem they are even looking at.
Wait, what do you mean by kind of problem?
Well, are they seeking information or do they need actual work executed?
Okay, let's really unpack the mechanics of that because we are looking at a fundamental shift happening right now as we head into 2026. The sources we have make this crucial distinction between traditional AI and agentic AI.
Yes, that distinction is everything.
Right, so traditional AI provides answers. It is entirely reactive. Like if you ask a traditional AI for your top customers by revenue growth, it just gives you a perfectly formatted list.
And then it stops.
Exactly, it stops. And then a human still has to act as the integration layer. Like a person has to take that list, open up a totally separate CRM, draft individual emails, chase down director approvals, and manually log all the updates.
Precisely. The time to value for traditional AI is still, measured in hours of human effort. Because the human is still the engine driving the actual process forward.
Yeah.
You are essentially using AI as just a highly advanced search engine.
Yeah, exactly.
But agentic AI, however, pursues goals. It is proactive. You don't ask it for a list. You give it an objective. You tell the agent, identify the top customers by growth potential, flag the at-risk accounts, prepare a prioritized list, and automatically notify the relevant director for approval.
Think about it like this, because I love this analogy. Traditional AI is like having the world's greatest recipe book.
I like that.
Right. So you ask it how to bake a complex cake, and it gives you flawless step-by-step instructions. But you still have to go to the pantry, measure the flour, mix the batter, and, aggressively watch the oven so it doesn't burn.
You're doing all the real labor.
Exactly. But agentic AI is like hiring a professional sous chef. You simply say, I need a chocolate cake for a VIP client arriving at 3 p.m. That agentic sous chef reads the recipe, checks the pantry, orders the missing ingredients, bakes the cake, plates it perfectly, and only comes to ask for your help if the oven literally catches fire.
That is exactly the shift in classification we're talking about. When you classify the problem as, we need work executed rather than we need an answer, you completely change your metric of success.
Because it's not about how fast you get the answer anymore.
Right. Because the agent takes actions across connected systems within defined boundaries, handling all those routine exceptions on its own. The time to value shrinks from hours of manual human effort to literally mere minutes. Humans are no longer the bottleneck in the routine steps. They just act as the final oversight.
Okay, so let's say we have this autonomous sous chef ready to go. We've classified that we need work executed. But what happens when the kitchen runs out of flour or a recipe calls for an ingredient we've just never used before?
Well, things break.
Yeah, they break. And that brings us to step 2 of the effective decision framework, defining the problem. And according to the data in our sources, defining the actual messy reality of the workflow is exactly where those 40% of failing projects just go completely off the rails.
It is the single most common failure mode in the data, period. Leaders often just jump straight into building. They treat the AI agent as just another, off-the-shelf software license.
Like buying a Microsoft Word subscription or something.
Exactly like that. They fail to recognize that implementing an agent isn't an IT upgrade. It is a fundamental workflow redesign. And because they rush it, they design exclusively for what the industry calls the happy path.
I really want to focus on that happy path concept because it is so deceptive, isn't it? The happy path is basically the idealized whiteboard version of a process, right?
Yeah, it's the fantasy version.
It's how a workflow should operate if everything goes perfectly. Like if every client fills out the intake form correctly, if everyone responds to emails on time, if all the legacy data is perfectly clean.
Yes, but the real world is inherently chaotic. Let's look at a really concrete scenario. Suppose you build an agent to automatically process client onboarding based purely on that happy path.
Okay, sounds good in theory.
Right. But on day 3, a client submits a form using a nickname, while their legal identification in your database uses their full birth name. Or perhaps a document contains sensitive data that triggers very specific handling requirements under the Australian Privacy Act.
Oh man, if the agent was only built for the happy path, it's basically like a self-driving car that only works on a perfectly sunny day with absolutely zero traffic.
That is a perfect way to look at it.
Because the second it starts raining or a pedestrian steps off the curb unexpectedly, the car completely panics and shuts down. The agent hits an edge case, panics, and the entire automated workflow just breaks. Or worse, it confidently makes the wrong decision and creates a massive compliance breach.
Exactly. And this is exactly why the sources emphatically highlight the strategic role of discovery. Discovery isn't just a preliminary chat or some sales formality. It is the highest leverage activity in any AI project.
So what does that actually look like in practice?
It involves rigorously mapping the messy, real-world workflow step by step. It surfaces those data constraints, the legacy system blockages, and critical compliance requirements like data sovereignty under Australian law before a single line of code is ever even written.
Hold on, though. I have to push back here on behalf of the listener. Because when you say discovery phase, my immediate thought as a business owner is that it just sounds like a massive roadblock.
I hear that all the time.
Because everyone else in the market is moving at 100 miles an hour with AI right now. They're launching things today.
Right.
If I take weeks to rigorously map out my messy workflows, aren't I just letting my competitors win? It really feels like slamming on the brakes.
That is a completely understandable reaction given the market pressure. I mean, it really is. But it is a dangerous illusion. Skipping discovery to build cheap, rapid demos feels like progress, but mechanically, it is just creating massive technical debt.
Oh, because you're building on a broken foundation.
Precisely. You get a system that looks incredible in a controlled boardroom demonstration, but fails spectacularly when faced with real, chaotic customer data. The hard truth is simply this. The cost of a structured discovery conversation is incredibly low, but the cost of skipping it is routinely measured in hundreds of thousands of dollars in wasted spend.
Yeah, the expensive architectural rework.
Exactly, and ultimately delayed value. You aren't slowing down by doing discovery, you are preventing a high-speed crash.
That makes total sense when you frame it around technical debt. You have to define the reality of the problem before you can solve it. All right, so let's say we've done the hard work. We've mapped the chaotic reality of the business. But that raises a massive red flag for me.
Oh, that.
Well, if the real world is so messy, where is it actually safe to let an autonomous AI loose? We obviously can't just put it in charge of high-level corporate strategy.
No, definitely not.
Right. So this brings us to the third step, specifying the answer to the problem. What should the actual application of these agents look like in practice for an Australian enterprise?
The ideal environment for agentic AI is actually very specific, and it requires real discipline to stick to it. The strongest, most measurable results are found in repetitive, rule-based processes that have crystal clear decision points.
So nothing ambiguous.
Exactly. You do not want agents making subjective, nuanced business decisions. You want them executing high-volume standard logic where the rules of engagement are clearly defined.
The sources give us some incredibly concrete examples of where this is moving the needle mechanically right now. Let's look at professional services, for
That's
instance.
a huge area for this.
Yeah, traditionally you have highly educated junior staff who spend hours, maybe days, doing basic data entry and validation. Specifying the answer here looks like deploying an agent to act as the first line of defense.
Right, taking over the inbox, essentially.
Exactly. The agent extracts unstructured information from incoming emails and PDFs, applies standard validation rules against the company's central database, flags any missing data anomalies, and then just prepares the entries for a quick 5-minute human review.
Think about the mechanical shift there. Those junior staff stop acting like human data routers.
Right.
They are no longer just copying and pasting from an email to a CRM all day. They are suddenly freed up to actually focus on client relationships and complex problem solving. And, we see a remarkably similar transformation in service operations.
Oh, right. Managing the constant friction of scheduling, the daily noise of reminders, late cancellations, and rebookings, that stuff is exhausting.
It creates endless administrative interruptions.
Mm.
The specified answer in service operations is an agent that manages those booking links entirely autonomously.
So it's basically playing calendar Tetris all day.
Exactly. If a late cancellation comes in, the agent doesn't just flag it. It reads the waitlist, applies specific priority rules based on client tier or urgency, reaches out to the next person, and fills the slot automatically. It completely silences that administrative noise, and the staff's capacity utilization improves dramatically without adding a single head to the payroll.
Wow. And we can't ignore supply chain either. This is a massive one for Australian businesses dealing with vast geographies. The sources highlight agents monitoring stock levels across multiple warehouses. But again, it's not just reactive monitoring.
No, it's doing the actual ordering.
Right. The agent is analyzing the stock, reading the agreed-upon lead times from overseas suppliers, checking contract parameters, and actually generating the purchase orders. The operations managers can finally stop running around putting out daily inventory fires and actually focus on strategic vendor negotiations.
If we synthesize the underlying mechanics of all three of these examples, a really clear pattern emerges. The specified answer here is not about replacing humans. It is about shifting humans.
Shifting them up the value chain.
Precisely. You are moving your people away from performing every single routine robotic step and shifting them into roles that require empathy, judgment, relationship building, and strategy. And when you specify the problem and the answer correctly in these process-heavy teams, the reporting consistently shows productivity improvements in the 20 to 40% range.
20 to 40%. I mean, that is not a marginal incremental gain. That is a complete transformation of a team's baseline output. But realizing that gain relies entirely on the fourth step of our framework, deciding what is right.
Yes, the governance piece.
Because knowing what an agent should do is very different from deciding what is the right way to actually build, govern, and own it. If a business implements this, who actually holds the keys?
That is the pivotal question of architecture and ownership. And it's another major failure mode highlighted in the data. Many organizations completely fail at knowledge transfer.
How does that happen?
Well, they outsource the build to a third-party vendor. The vendor builds a highly complex agentic system, but they never transfer the underlying knowledge of how the data flows or how the logic works back to the business.
Oh, that is an absolute nightmare scenario. It's like paying someone a fortune to build you a state-of-the-art custom race car, but when they finally deliver it to your garage, they refuse to give you the keys.
Or the manual.
Right. And they refuse to teach you how to change the oil, tune the engine, or read the telemetry. You have this incredibly powerful machine sitting there, but you are completely locked in and entirely dependent on the mechanic who built it to do even the smallest thing. Like every time you want to change the radio station, you get a massive consulting bill.
That is a perfect analogy for a vendor lock-in, and it leaves Australian businesses incredibly vulnerable. This is why deciding what is right means choosing an implementation partner and a governance structure that actively prioritizes your independence. You need a system built for your specific context, but you also need to own it.
Which brings us nicely to how C9 actually handles this.
Exactly. This is exactly where the C9 approach comes into play, utilizing what they call a blended hybrid team model.
Let's break down the mechanics of that blended hybrid model, because it solves a very specific friction point for businesses here.
Well, purely local development can be prohibitively expensive for large-scale automation, right? But purely offshore development often suffers from massive communication gaps and a total lack of local business context. A blended hybrid model solves this by giving you Australian-based architects who provide the local oversight.
So they know the lay of the land.
Exactly. They understand the nuances of the Australian Privacy Act,
Yeah.
they understand the local market context, and they provide clear, direct client communication. But that local strategic oversight is combined with offshore execution capacity.
So the mechanics of it mean you get enterprise-grade architecture and strict local accountability, but at a much more accessible cost structure. You aren't sacrificing quality and compliance for a cheap price, nor are you paying a massive premium just for local coding execution. It bridges the gap perfectly.
Exactly. And most importantly, returning to your race car analogy, C9 treats knowledge transfer as a core deliverable. It's not an optional extra or some post-project afterthought. Comprehensive documentation, hands-on team training, and complete architectural transparency are built into the project timeline from day one.
So they actually hand over the keys.
They hand over the keys and they teach your team how the engine works. The right decision is ensuring the client actually owns and can evolve their system, rather than being permanently held hostage in the vendor relationship.
Which brings us to the final step of the effective decision framework: carrying out the decision. Execution. Let's bring this all down to earth for a second. We've classified that we need proactive agents to do work. We've defined the real chaotic problem through rigorous discovery. We've specified where agents actually add value in rule-based tasks. And we've decided on a hybrid ownership-first approach.
Right.
So for the Australian business owner or executive listening right now, how do they actually execute on this today? Where do they start?
Well, taking action requires a highly disciplined, focused approach. AI adoption is fundamentally a change management exercise, so the practical next steps outlined in the sources are very clear. Number one, do not try to boil the ocean.
Keep it contained.
Yes. Identify just one high-volume, rule-heavy process that is currently creating bottlenecks and consuming significant team time.
Just one process. I love that constraint. Keep the scope incredibly tight so you can actually prove the value to your team without causing massive change fatigue. What's step two?
Step two is to rigorously assess if that specific process is actually stable enough to automate. If the rules of the process change every 3 days, depending on which manager happens to be in the office, you literally cannot automate it.
Right, the AI would just be confused.
Exactly. An AI agent needs clear boundaries. You have to stabilize the human rules first. And then step three, book a structured discovery conversation to actually map that real workflow, define the exact decision points, and set the financial success metrics.
And when it comes to the actual commercial engagement, how does a business structure that so they aren't taking on massive upfront risk?
Carrying out the decision means choosing a commercial model that actually matches your business's maturity and the specific nature of the project. C9 offers flexible engagement models to support exactly this.
So it's not one size fits all.
No, not at all. If the scope is perfectly clear after that discovery phase, a fixed-price project makes the most sense. It gives you absolute cost certainty. However, if you are doing exploratory work to see what's even technologically possible with your legacy systems, a time and materials model might be better suited.
That makes sense.
Or, you might just need staff augmentation with structured minimum terms to integrate expert AI capability directly into your existing IT teams. The execution model must mechanically fit the reality of your business.
We have covered some serious ground today. To summarize this journey for you, Agentic AI is no longer a futuristic science experiment. It is a hard operational reality hitting the market right now. Treating it as a strategic business capability, one that requires deep process understanding, clear governance, and actual ownership is the true differentiator.
It really is.
That disciplined, step-by-step approach is exactly what separates the 45% of organizations who will successfully orchestrate AI at scale by 2030 from the 40% whose projects will crash, burn, and just be completely canceled by 2027.
It is entirely about intention and structure. But as we wrap up, there is one final, broader implication that leaders really need to consider. We talked earlier about deploying agents in professional services, right?
Yeah, having them take over the routine data entry.
Exactly. Having them take over the validation so junior staff can do higher value work. This raises a profound mechanical question for your business. If agentic AI takes over all of the repetitive, rule-based tasks, the very tasks that have traditionally served as the training grounds where your junior staff cut their teeth and learn the business from the ground up, how will you need to completely redesign the way you train and develop your future leaders?
Wow. That is a massive question to ponder. If the automated sous chef does all the chopping, measuring, and basic baking, how does the young apprentice ever learn enough about the ingredients to become the head chef?
That's the billion-dollar question.
It really is. That is a talent development challenge that every executive needs to be strategizing around right now. But to tackle the immediate operational challenge and turn your AI ambition into a realistic, governed plan, your next step is very clear. You need that structured discovery conversation, and you can get one for free.
Highly recommend taking advantage of that.
Absolutely. To turn these concepts into execution, book your free discovery conversation with C9. Visit www.c9.com.au. That is www.c9.com.au. Australia's leading custom software, apps, integration, and database developer company.
It's the best first step you can take.
For sure. Please don't forget to hit that follow button on our page and make sure you share this deep dive with other business leaders in your network who could really benefit from this knowledge. Because as we saw right at the start, the gold rush is on, but 40% of the market is heading straight for a cliff. Make sure you and your network have the right framework to build the bridge. Thanks for listening.